Hi, welcome to my side hustle episode 3, getting my first client phase 1. This past week was all about writing my sample, my first sales letter that I could use to send people so that they could see where I'm at with my copywriting and whether we could do a project together. And it all started with let's write 2 to 4 pages long letter and start sending that off. But one thing I definitely learned is that sales letter has a purpose to accomplish, and to do that, it just has to have a lot of pages. And that's why the average page out there is like 40, 50, 60 pages long. So yeah, it ended up being 16 pages for me. I'm pretty much done at this point. So I want to talk about my experience of writing my first sales letter, what I've learned, biggest lesson, and where I want to take it from here. Most of the concepts I've learned from the Reddit videos I've shared last week. And the biggest one of all is like what seems to be 80% of the success of any sales letter is what some people would call an angle. And what an angle is like a title of the book. It was not only the title itself though, but it also about how this angle gonna frame and shape the way you're gonna present the content. It will all get clear once we do the example from the Reddit video. Imagine you have to write market a book, right? And the author comes to you and says, hey, I am a very successful business owner who managed to free up all of my day. I barely work anymore. I kind of automated my business through outsourcing. I have a very nice system and I want to share that with people on how to do that. But I don't have any experience with marketing. So could you help me to market my book? And there are 2 ways to go about it in general. One is what some would call a direct angle. That's like just to call things what it is, straight to the point. For example, how to outsource your daily tasks. And then the title of the book could be Outsourcing 101 or Outsource, something like that, something like calling things what they are. It's actually the most common way to go about taking an angle, just, say it what it is. And there are in fact so many books out there that do exactly that about outsourcing that are called kind of like the outsource. But now that's one way to do it, but compare it to a book by the name 4-Hour Workweek. I don't know if you've heard about it, but literally everyone I know either read it or heard about it. It's like, whatever, like a million time bestseller, 100 million copies sold, very successful book. Everybody knows it. Every time I hear 4-Hour Workweek, I have these visuals in my head about the orange columns. So it's definitely more successful than any other book on outsourcing that I've heard of. But it is actually, at the end of the day, a book about outsourcing. What's the difference? Like, why is that the 4-Hour Workweek is so much more famous than any other book? And of course, there are many factors, but we're talking specifically about marketing, copywriting area specifically right now. What makes the difference? It's the angle, because it's how the information is presented, it's how information is shaped, it's how it's marketed. It's just better marketing, because at the end of the day, the information about the outsourcing, the steps, the systems, the tools, the concepts are more or less the same. In fact, in many cases, not all of them, but in many cases, it's just all about the commodity. Like whatever you're offering, it's all just a slight variations of the same idea, same concepts, same products. But what makes a difference is a better marketing, is a better story, better strategy, and so on. What makes one angle better than the other? Well, first of all, nobody really cares about outsourcing. It's not fun, nobody wants to do it, nobody gets excited about the process of outsourcing. What people care about is what outsourcing gets you. That is less work, more free time. And so it starts right there. Why talk about something nobody cares about? Well, you should be talking about something that people want to get out of it. And in fact, the Reddit video offers an amazing formula that I loved so much. I typed it out, printed it, and put it on my wall. And it reads something like, appeal to the primary driver. It says something else, but essentially it's to appeal to the primary driver plus have a unique mechanism, and this is going to be equal to intellectually appealing offer. So we can use 4-Hour Workweek example to break it out. Now, the the appeal to the primary driver. What does it mean? Well, anything that people do, and especially in marketing, especially in buying something, spending money on, has some sort of a primary driver to it. Something that nobody, for some reason, wants to talk about. Well, I guess it just doesn't make people look good when they say that, but it is what it is. In the case of 4-hour work week, it's just plain laziness. It's just, want to work less and want to have more free time. That's the primary driver there. Now, because it sounds bad, nobody wants to say it directly, but as a marketer, your job is to massage it, make it obvious enough, but don't say it explicitly. So if we look at 4-hour work week, what they did, they call it escape 9 to 5, travel the world and join the new rich. That's the sort of the leading sentence, right? The subtitle of the cover. Reading it, everyone can get excited about it. Yeah, I want to escape 9 to 5. I want to travel the world. I want to join the new rich. I can see myself doing that. So they get interested, they get excited. They understand what this means is like work less, have more free time, but nobody said that explicitly, right? So once consumers get excited about your primary offer, once you've done the job right, you appeal to the right driver, they start having questions about, okay, yeah, I want this, but how do I get it? And that's where the unique mechanism comes into play. And what it means is like, okay, so you can escape 9 to 5, yada, yada. How you do it is through this thing. And you could call it through outsourcing. That's one way to do it. But it's just not catchy. It's not memorable. It's just plain commodity, right? But if you call it something special, give it a bit of what the videos talk about, like gimmick, it could stick better and it could be more memorable and it's just better marketing. And in this case, it's 4-hour work week. So how you can escape 9 to 5 and all those things is through this thing called 4-hour work week. So you put this two together and you have an intellectually appealing offer, and that's just really great for copywriting. So in the world of financial copywriting, it's all about trying to sell subscription to the newsletter, and you could do it through a sale pitch on a specific stock or a specific trading strategy. So the letters have a very generic angle, just like outsourcing 101. They just call things what it is, like best stock to buy, best tech stock for 2019, a stock you must own, this sort of things. And it's probably working since there's so many of them. But others try to follow the formula where they try to appeal through some kind of like a unique mechanism. And I've come across this letter. It's that kind of captured my attention. I really like the way they implemented this formula. It's called something like a trading strategy once banned for 100 years, now available to insiders. Learn how people make 10, 50, 100 times their money through Black Olive Fund. So I think it's very well done, because if you're interested in investing, you would read the first subtitle, which is like, it was banned for 100 years, but now legal for insiders. I wonder what is it? And then it appeals to your driver of make 10, 50, 100 times. And by the way, in financial copywriting, there are only two drivers really, which is the same drivers that drive the stock market. It's fear and greed. And sometimes it's even two in one, which is fear of missing out. So in this case, they would say 10, 50, 100 times, which is basically appeal to your greed. But it also, because they talked about how it's only available to insiders and like nobody really knows it, it's kind of fear of missing out as well. So very nice appeal to the primary driver. And then I already have questions in my head. Okay, what is that we're talking about? And then they provide a gimmick, right? The unique mechanism, the Black Olive Fund. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I already have visuals. It sounds pretty cool. It's easy to memorize. So, and then they go into details of why it's called Black Olive Fund, because it's kind of tied up to a history of some black olives in ancient Greece and whatever. But I just like these kind of letters when it's just interesting to read, at least. So what's cool about it is like once you have something like this, you're gonna capture the attention of the reader, and the next job is to be converting that attention into the sale. But before we go into the conversion part, let's talk a bit more about the capturing the attention, which is the angle again. There is another letter that I actually used as a basis for my sample. It's called Royal Gold of Marijuana. I just came across this sales letter randomly, and I started reading it, and I liked it. And then I found the stock that they were actually talking about. So I wrote a separate letter about it. But let's look at the royal gold first. In short, the stock has like one special thing about it, where instead of building its own cultivation plants and like growing marijuana, it just makes deals in an industry where they give money to people who are already in the middle of setting up their facilities, and then they get the rights for some of the crop, right? Because right now there is an issue of it's very hard to get the license and set up facilities, equipment, hire people. It just takes a long time, and there's already like huge undersupply in the industry. So this company decided to go a short route. Let's do deals and give people money who already have their licenses and facilities and so on, and get to business as fast as possible. So it's pretty cool part about this business. It's unique, it's different. I think it's one of the first one to do it. And well, so as a copywriter, right, the copywriter who wrote Royal Gold of Marijuana, he looked at it and he's like, okay, that's a cool feature. Why don't we try to get an angle on it, right? Because you could take a straight angle and just say, okay, this is, guys, the first company that does streaming deals. It's called a streaming model. Some people would call it royalty, but whatever. I guess royalty is just easier to remember, and everybody knows what royalty is. So, but then what this copywriter did, he kind of went out and started looking for an angle. And he found that this business model being implemented very successfully over the past 100 years in the gold industry, where miners, instead of digging up gold themselves, where they have rights to, they would just give money to other miners to do it for them, and then in exchange they would have a cut of every ounce of gold that comes out of the ground. And a lot of people made money on this, a lot of investors made money on it. So what they did is, okay, this worked in the gold industry, and marijuana industry is even better, and that's why this model will do even better in marijuana industry, and then this company has this model, so that's why this is a good stock to buy. I think it's pretty good sales letter. It has a good angle. It has a unique mechanism, because they start with, oh, last time this happened, people made 1,000,000% return, whatever. And then they say, so I'm like, okay, I'm captured. My attention is captured, right? So last time this happened, people made money. So what is that we're talking about? And then they talk about it's a royalty streams and yada yada. So I'm like, okay, I already get visuals. And then they talk about the gold industry. So I'm like, okay, there's an example. And then they talk about royal gold of marijuana, right? Something like that. So, which is a unique mechanism. So it was good. But as I was reading down the sales letter, I started getting more details about the stock. And then I found that, okay, actually the CEO of the company is a guy who co-founded what's now one of the biggest cannabis companies in the world. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty cool. How often you have a guy who co-founded one of the most successful companies in the world, and now is building a new company. So I thought this could be an angle on itself. Instead of talking about the business model, which is doing this royalty kind of deals, I could talk about how the CEO has done this in the past and now doing it again. That's a whole separate angle, right? I could just focus on that. But then I was reading further along, and then I also learned that this company has very interesting business plan, where it, instead of focusing on just selling medical marijuana, which is where the most of the money is right now, they want to focus on derivatives market, which is like vapes and edibles, chewables, pills, stuff like that. And it's like in a kind of like a baker versus a farmer who sells weed, or like selling gasoline instead of selling crude oil, just higher margin. It requires more value-added activities, more complicated structure. So I just felt like it's pretty cool that they want to focus on this area of the market compared to the consensus, which is focusing on just selling dry flower of cannabis. So, and then I was like, okay, I could also focus on this one. So now I see there's like 3 pillars, right? Business model, leadership, and business plan. But then I realized, okay, what I could also do, there's like a 4th angle, is to combine all 3 of them and try to see if I could take an angle on that. So at first, I started thinking along the line of like maybe Michelin star or haute couture, something that's like, would highlight the uniqueness of this company. But then as I was doing my research, by the way, speaking of research, I've done a lot of it on this stock. I didn't talk about it, but I think I spent just as much time doing research as writing, because you need to understand what is that you're promoting, right? That's how I uncovered all these pieces and details of information about the stock so that I could take an angle on it, right? But anyways, so I started going and doing research, trying to see what kind of angle I could take, and then I came to these pictures of like paintings somehow, and then there's a Mona Lisa painting, and I just thought to myself, how come Mona Lisa is the most known painting in the world? And as I started learning about it, it turns out, like in any other example, it would be like many unique factors kind of coming together at the right time in the right place. And I thought, wow, this could be, I could make a connection to how Mona Lisa had a lot of factors at the right time, right place, and that's what made it so successful. And then I could connect it to same thing happens in the stock market, where, you know, in any niche, there's only one stock that people really know about. Like think about e-commerce, that's Amazon, or cell phones, that's Apple. And then I could make a connection then to the cannabis industry. So in the painting, there's only one Mona Lisa. In e-commerce stocks, there's only one Amazon. And then in cannabis stocks, there will be only one. And that's my suspension. And then I just say like the Mona Lisa of cannabis stocks. So, and then obviously, you know, I could write how much money people made in Amazon, how much money people made in like whatever the best company in whatever niche is, and then I make the connection to the cannabis stock. So I appeal to the greed, and then but I also make a connection on like how timing is very good right now, and how the big investors starting to learn about this opportunity, and how like the window is closing right now. So it's more like fear of missing out again. So I think the primary driver is more or less the same, right? It's fear, greed, or fear of missing out. But then it's all about how you present it, and then what kind of a unique angle, unique mechanism you come up with to promote it. Just like with the 4-hour work week, the content is more or less the same. Like the information about the stock is more or less the same across any investment analyst. The analysis is more or less the same, all slightly different, but what could be unique about one sales letter from another is the angle, right? Because information is more or less commoditized, but the way you present it and the way you explain it could be a major game changer for the sales of the newsletter, essentially. In fact, I always keep thinking like there might even be a better book about outsourcing than 4-hour work week. I don't know if there is, but I wouldn't be surprised. And this is because it's not enough to have the best product to be the biggest to be the holder of the biggest market share in the market. Sometimes even less effective, or like, you know, less efficient products make it bigger, just because they were really better at getting their products in the hands of people, which is really marketing at the end of the day. Was about the angle, right? The 80% of the success of any sales letter. What about the other 20? So at least in the financial newsletter world, but I could see how it's applicable probably even anywhere, it's about other two things. The first one is to prove what you have told them in the title, because right in your title, in your subtitle, your lead sentence, you hyped it up, you made big promises, because you really have to capture attention. There is no other way to do it. But then once they start reading it, the hype comes down, and then that's where the analytical mind kicks in, and you have to be able to prove what you promised them in the title, because if you don't, then there's going to be no sale, there's going to be no conversion, that you're going to be only good at capturing attention. So you have to give them all the facts and break out all the facts, give them the examples, give them the data. And that's why the letters become 40, 50 pages, because usually there's many things to go through, and the more information you provide, relevant information, and in a more concise and a better way, the better. So, and the third thing is to establish some sort of expertise. And what it means is, at least in the context of newsletters, you have to sell the writer. So who is the author? What kind of success he had in the past? Where is he working? What is he known for? You sort of building this profile of a person they could trust and they could listen, why they should listen to him, right? So yeah, so those are basically three things: angle, the most important thing, and then proving the angle, and then selling the author, establishing the expertise. I think if I feel like that's what the sales letter should do, and that's what I've been focusing on. Mine again was 16 pages. I think I throttled it a little bit because I just got tired of writing it, and then I just really want to start getting feedback on it, rather than writing like 40 pages and it's all wrong. I'd rather write 16 pages and then, just fix what's wrong, and then maybe write more. So I left it at 16. I'm ready to send it out. And yeah, that's the video, guys. This week I'm going to be sending this sample to people in the industry and see what kind of response I'm going to get. Next video, we're going to be definitely talking about how to build how I built my leads and how I reached out to them and what kind of response I got back. And depending on what kind of response I got back, we're going to talk about that. If I hear something back, something good, we'll cover that. If I don't hear anything back, then we'll talk about what's the plan. Yeah. So until then, have a great week, everyone.